Hi, thanks for watching. So today I'm going to be reviewing the preview of The Nightbirds by Christopher Golden. Now, I've had some Christopher Golden books on my TBR for a while. I know Ararat is on there and Snowblind. So long-time lurker, first-time reader here. And thanks to NetGalley for providing a digital review copy in exchange for an honest review. This was a really good book. And it hit a lot of check boxes for me. You have the forest, and to top it off, it's a floating mangrove. It's a floating forest on a freighter that's half sunk. So while it's not a ghost story, you do have that ghost ship vibe, especially if you look at the cover, which I believe is by Greg Ruth, if co-pilot is to be believed. And you have the supernatural elements. So you have witches, for lack of a better word. You have a storm rolling in, and I love storms. I love being in storms. I love reading about storms. I love watching movies about storms. So there was a lot of check boxes that this book hit for me, and it was interesting to boot, and it was intense. It was really intense. There was a lot of moments where I found myself tensed up and had to consciously untense my muscles before I continued reading. So that's always a good sign. That's always a good sign if I'm stress reading. I don't know if that sounds as good as it actually is. But so we start off and there's a research crew. You have Charlie Book, who goes by Book. You have Gerald, you have Louisa, and you have Alan, and they've just gotten off the research vessel, which is the Christabel. It is a half-sunk freighter ship off the Galveston coast. That's another checkbox that hit for me. It takes place in Texas, my home state. And there's a storm coming in, but as we know, meteorologists don't always hit the nail on the head when it comes to weather. Three of them, Gerald, Louisa, and Alan, have opted to stay on the mainland until the storm blows over. Book, however, normally stays on the ship that has become his living quarters, and he doesn't think that it's going to be as bad as everybody says it is. Louisa and Gerald are really the two who have been trying to convince him to stay on the mainland, and they kind of rope Alan into giving his 2 cents as well to try to get him to stay, but he doesn't. And while he's making his way to, I think he parks at the marina, and he's about to take a boat out to the Christabel, which is offshore some ways. And his ex-girlfriend Ruby kind of approaches him from nowhere. And there's a whole story behind their breakup, and it's not revealed initially, but you do find out the reason for their breakup, and it plays an integral part of the book, because a lot of the choices that Ruby and Book make throughout the story are foreshadowed and tainted and colored by the reason behind their breakup. And Ruby tells him as she comes to him at the marina that she has her sister Bella's baby with her. Bella has been murdered, and Bella's girlfriend, May, is with them. And there are people who are trying to kill the baby. And she convinces him enough to where he takes them to the Christabel, even though there's a storm coming in, and he's really not quite certain what to make of this strange woman that Ruby has with her at the moment. But when they get to the boat, Ruby explains that her sister was part of a coven of witches, again, for lack of a better word, because what they are worshippers of an ancient entity. So like a witch, bird, woman, goddess, god thing from before witchcraft was even a thing. And it says it quite often in the book that this is where the stories of witchcraft come from. So it's older than that. And so they're part of this coven that worshipped Stratum, which is this bird woman god thing. And Bella had gotten pregnant with a specific purpose of sacrificing the baby so that Stratum could walk the earth in flesh form again. And at some point, May claims her and Bella had fallen in love with the baby, and decided that they couldn't go through with it. And May stressed this often, that she couldn't go through with the murder of something so innocent, regardless of what her and Bella had done before for the coven. And of course, Book is naturally skeptical of the whole story, except Ruby is quite the logical person. And when Ruby explains the reasons why she believes May, which happen after May comes to her house with the baby Aiden and explains the situation, there's events that occur after that point that lead Ruby to believe the whole story. He starts to kind of believe, and so they kind of barricade themselves inside the captain's quarters. May takes a Sharpie and starts writing a ward on the door frame and on the windows, because there's windows. And throughout the night, these birds, they come and they start bashing themselves against the window. Well, when May is finished putting up the ward, some of the birds catch fire, and Book sees the whatever it is that she's writing on the windows and the doorframe, the letters or whatever they are, they kind of spark. So he's starting to believe what they're saying, even if he's warring with himself, because of the fact that he's starting to believe what they're saying. Now, in the meantime, Louisa and Gerald have gone to a hotel together. Louisa and Gerald are they're having a tryst. Gerald has fallen in love with Louisa, but he's afraid to tell her because he's afraid that for Louisa this is just a fling, and he doesn't want to scare her off. But Louisa is really changing who Gerald believes himself to be. And while they're at the hotel, Louisa looks out the window and she sees something that when you read it in the book, you don't really recognize what it is that's happening. She sees women out in the storm, and you don't realize until later what she's seeing. And when you realize what she's seeing and go back and reimagine that particular moment, it's really freaking creepy. And she kind of brushes it off. She goes back to bed. And Alan has gone to, I think it's a kind of bed and breakfast. He's an older professor type. His husband has died, and he likes to be taken care of. So the woman who owns the bed and breakfast, she makes him breakfast in the morning. She tidies up his room when he's on the research vessel, and he likes it. He's a simple man. He's a quiet man. And he wakes up to a phone call, I believe. I believe he wakes up to a phone call, or he makes a call, but it's to Book, and their connection is not right. And he realizes that the storm is actually worse than they were expecting it to be. And out on the boat, it's bouncing this sunken ship that hasn't moved in like 100 years. It's bouncing it around. And so he calls Gerald and Louisa. They also have a bad connection, but he does manage to tell them that he's unable to reach Book. Oh, that's what it is. He tried to call Book, and it rang, and he didn't pick up, and then it went, and then it died, and then when he called back, it didn't ring at all. And so Gerald and Louisa try, and they get the same thing. It rings the first time, nobody picks up, and then when they call back again, it doesn't ring at all. So at this point, everybody's kind of like, okay, well, maybe we should be looking into this. Maybe we should make an effort to reach him. And so you have the three of the team who are trying to help Book because they're concerned about him in the storm. They don't realize that there's this whole other thing happening with witches and people trying to kill a baby and wards, and it gets really intense. It's a really interesting book. You have these women who, I don't know that they turn into birds. It's murky on the details of exactly what these women are. You know, they're not exactly human. They're not exactly witches. I'm gonna excuse me. But it's a really fascinating story. And like I said, it hits so many of the check boxes for me. It's just such a good book. So I did go and I watched I did go and watch a video of Christopher Golden talking about this book and one of his other books. I think it was called All Hallows or All Hallows Eve. And the guy looks like my daughter's band teacher. I swear, if her band teacher had a beard, he'd be the spitting image of Christopher Golden. It was really unnerving. But it was truly a really good book. I highly recommend it, and I'm definitely going to be reading some more Christopher Golden. So I'll probably be picking up Ararat or Snowblind here soon, and you'll get that. Again, thank you to NetGalley for providing a digital review copy. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe below.